Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into one of the most profound and, let's be honest, challenging chapters in the entire Bible, Genesis chapter 22. It's the story of Abraham and Isaac, a story that is the ultimate test of faith. We're going to unpack it together, so let's get started. Right out of the gate, the story begins with this absolutely staggering command from God. Genesis 22, verse 2 says, "Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of." I mean, just listen to that language. It's intentionally heart-wrenching. Thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest. God layers these phrases one on top of the other to show us the immense, unbelievable personal cost. This isn't just a test, it's the ultimate test. So you have to ask, right? What is going on here? How do we even begin to understand a command that seems to go against everything we know about God's character? Well, in this devotional, we're going to journey through this text together to uncover the deep theological truths, and you'll see an incredible prophetic picture of Jesus Christ that's hidden within this powerful story. Okay, first things first, let's clear up a really important word. The King James Version says God did tempt Abraham. Now, in modern English, that sounds bad, but in older English, tempt simply means to test or to prove. And we know from James chapter 1, verse 13, that God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. So this wasn't a solicitation to do evil, no. This was a divine examination, a proving of a faith that was about to be revealed as something truly special. And get this, the very first time the word love shows up in the entire Bible is right here in Genesis 22. And it's used to describe a father's relationship with the son he's willing to sacrifice. You know, that is not an accident. It's like God is setting up a divine pattern, pointing us thousands of years into the future to the ultimate act of love, God the Father giving his only begotten son, just as it says in John 3:16. Abraham is literally living out a prophetic drama of the gospel. So, how in the world does Abraham respond to this unbelievable command? Well, his actions, they speak volumes about just how mature his faith had become. Verse 3 tells us, "And Abraham rose up early in the morning." There's no arguing, no trying to bargain with God, no dragging his feet. He just gets up and methodically starts preparing. This immediate response is such a powerful lesson for all of us, isn't it? It shows us that delayed obedience is really just a form of disobedience. Abraham's faith had truly come a long way. And here's another one of those details that's so easy to just read right past. The text specifically says the journey took 3 days. That number, 3 days, is a huge prophetic signpost. For 3 agonizing days, in Abraham's heart and mind, Isaac was as good as dead. And this, of course, points us directly to the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who, as 1 Corinthians 15:4 says, rose again the 3rd day according to the Scriptures. And then, as if that's not enough, Abraham makes this absolutely astounding statement of faith. He turns to his servants and says, "I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you." Did you catch that? He said, "We will come again to you." How could he possibly know that? Well, Hebrews chapter 11 tells us exactly what was going through his mind. It says Abraham reasoned that God was able to raise Isaac even from the dead. I mean, he was so confident in God's promises that he was counting on resurrection power thousands of years before the cross. Incredible. Now, the scene gets even more intimate, even more poignant, and the prophetic picture of Christ just becomes impossible to miss. Think about this powerful parallel. Abraham lays the wood for the offering on his son Isaac, who then has to carry it up the mountain. Fast forward hundreds and hundreds of years, and in that very same area, God the Son, Jesus Christ, would carry his own wooden cross to the place of his sacrifice. And remember, Isaac wasn't a little kid. He was a young man, probably strong enough to resist his elderly father, but he submitted voluntarily, just like Jesus would one day voluntarily lay down his life. And when Isaac asks that absolutely heart-piercing question in verse 7, "Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" Abraham gives this incredible prophetic answer. He doesn't just say God will provide a lamb. No, he says, "My son, God will provide himself a lamb." This is the gospel in a nutshell. It's a prophecy that God wouldn't just send some substitute. He would come himself in the person of his son to be the sacrifice. And that brings us to the climax of the story. We're on the peak of Mount Moriah, where faith is being tested to its absolute limit, and God is about to reveal himself in a completely new way. The binding of Isaac, which is known in Hebrew as the Akedah, is so deeply significant.
Like we said, Isaac was fully capable of overpowering his father, but he allows himself to be bound and placed on that altar. It's this picture of total submission, mirroring Christ, who willingly laid down his own life. And it's a call for us as believers to present ourselves as a living sacrifice.
And there it is. The knife is in his hand. At this moment, Abraham's obedience is complete. In his heart, in his mind, in his intent, the sacrifice has been made. This is exactly what the book of James is talking about when it says, faith without works is dead. Abraham fully surrendered the gift back to the giver, proving his faith was real.
And in that exact moment, the angel of the Lord intervenes. It's fascinating because many Bible scholars believe this figure, who speaks with the authority of God himself, is actually a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus. He calls out and stops Abraham, saying, "For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me." The test was over. Abraham's reverence for God was proven beyond all doubt.
In response to all this, Abraham names that very spot Jehovah Jireh. The name literally means the Lord will see to it. We often translate it as the Lord will provide. And the lesson here is just so profound. God's provision is found precisely at the point of our complete obedience and surrender. He sees our need, and because he sees, he provides. And what was that provision? A ram caught in a thicket by its horns, which Abraham offered up in the stead of his son. I mean, wow, this is the doctrine of substitutionary atonement in stunning clarity. The innocent ram died so that Isaac, the son, could live. In the exact same way, the innocent Lamb of God, Jesus Christ, died on a cross so that we, the guilty, could live.
Now, after this ultimate act of faith, God doesn't just give Abraham a pat on the back. No, he confirms his covenant promise with an oath that can never be broken. Because of Abraham's obedience, God swears by his own name, because there's no one greater to swear by to bless him. He promises to multiply his descendants, to give them victory over their enemies, and most importantly of all, he promises that through Abraham's one singular seed, who Galatians 3:16 tells us is Christ, all the nations of the earth would be blessed.
Okay, so that's an incredible ancient story. But why does it matter to you and me today? Well, because this story is a blueprint for what a life of faith really looks like.
So what can we take away from this for our own lives? Well, first, we're called to surrender. We need to identify our own Isaac, that thing, that person, that dream we cherish the most, and be willing to place our love for the giver of that gift above the gift itself. Second, we're called to trust, to truly believe in Jehovah Jireh, and to expect his provision even when the situation looks impossible. And third, we're called to act, to let our faith become visible through immediate, wholehearted obedience.
And that really leads us to the final personal question for all of us to reflect on. We all have things we hold dear, things we can't imagine living without. What is the Isaac in your life that God might be asking you to place on the altar today, trusting that he is your ultimate provider and your greatest good? Because it's in that place of surrender that we truly find him. Thank you for joining us for this devotional from the You Need Faith in Jesus team.